Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome everyone into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology and everyone. I wanted to, do a special segment here. I found this great article from Digiday and we're going to cover it, a little bit for me, just so I can keep up to date with how Facebook is operating in some ways, but also for everyone out there because I am fairly well versed. I always like to read articles like this to refresh myself and make sure I have it straight in my head. But today the topic is going to be about deactivated profiles on Facebook and what actually happens to them. And of course, we can also talk about shadow profiles as well. And so everyone, computeramerica.com, that's where you'll find everything, past shows, future shows, articles, reviews, show notes, podcast, computeramerica.com, links to social media, go check it out. There you go, there's a self-plug. Why don't we go ahead and get started with a special segment? So everyone, stand by. So this article is from Digiday, and if you haven't heard about them, highly recommend that you go check them out. But they had this article that, really caught my attention because it's about Facebook, and it's looking at something that maybe people don't really understand. It's something that Facebook does, which is there's been a lot of calls lately to deactivate your Facebook page. But deactivating doesn't really do anything. It doesn't really matter because Facebook is a data behemoth. And this article will kind of spell that out for us. So let's go and start with this. Start out by calling Facebook a horror flick scenario where, of course, you have situations that Facebook treats deactivated accounts like weird, barely living force-fed bodies. So not only does the company keep these otherwise dormant digital beings on life support indefinitely, it continues to leach new data shared by advertisers to deactivated accounts, fortifying identifiable profiles just in case their master returns to electrify them back to life. So just because you deactivated your Facebook account back in 2013 doesn't mean that you will, somehow, get banned recommendations for 2013. No, in some cases you will continue to, just get the same recommendations that you would get through a Google service or something like that. Now, despite Facebook's recent virtue signaling on privacy, the company does not make Facebook's recent virtue signaling on privacy, the company does not make it clear to people that when they deactivate their accounts, its vampiric data connections continue to suck new information from advertisers, revealing people's personal interests, recent purchases, and other interactions. And the company has no data retention policy limiting the length of time it keeps deactivated accounts and the photos and the data associated with those frozen in virtual cryogenic stasis. So essentially, their own terms that they get to make. There's no legislation that says they have to delete it after so long. That can stay indefinitely. Now, here's the bigger issue, is that Facebook doesn't really care about your old data. Old data is next to useless data. It doesn't really matter what song you listened to 5 years ago. It doesn't really matter what you had for dinner a year ago. It doesn't really matter any of this. What matters is recent data. And that's hugely important. So they're able to keep your account up to date with very recent data And that's very attractive to advertisers. And I guess the bigger part here is that because there's no time limit on how long they get to keep a deactivated profile, it's not like, after 30 days, the deactivated profile gets deleted. Nope, Facebook keeps it forever, and they keep attributing data to that profile. Facebook refers to this this data drip from advertisers as your off Facebook activity. It is comprised of data reflecting interactions people have with other companies that those firms pass along to Facebook, such as information showing that someone registered for a website, bought a product, or signed up for a streaming subscription. So I think this is a big part that people don't truly understand about Facebook, is that Facebook buys data. They don't just sell in it. They don't just, sell it to advertisers for money. They also are the largest purchaser of private information from third parties, especially like, honestly, you're giving them access to it whenever you say sign in with Facebook. They get access to all that data and everything that you're doing on that service through the API. That's a guarantee. But for services that you don't sign in through Facebook, those accounts or those companies will collect your data, package it up, and then sell that to Facebook with some kind of identifier, be it your email address, be it your IP, be it something to tie it to your profile. They then sell it to Facebook. So not only is Facebook hoovering up all of your available data that you give to them by using their service, they are then collecting all of the data from every other service because it helps them. They want to have the most complete and up-to-date profile that they possibly can for every one of their 2 to 3 billion users. That's just how life is. And they say that, quote, that practice is shady in the best of times, but it seems ridiculous to do when someone has deactivated their account. Account deactivation is distinctly different from deletion. When people deactivate their accounts, their profile disappears from other people's view, but not Facebook's. Ultimately, Facebook views deactivation as a sign that a user may return to the account at some point, which they can simply log into the platform and reactivate. So while account deletion is permanent, deactivation is intended to allow people to return to their account. There you go. So when people deactivate their accounts, Facebook's perspective, all you're saying is, I don't want to use the social media product of Facebook at the moment. So in his assessment of Facebook's possible perspective on the subject, the logical extension of that is something like, we're still going to create this profile around you. So essentially, deactivation does not mean deletion, and deactivation simply means something that you can go back from. But also, Facebook is not going to treat you any differently than a regular profile. They're going to keep doing everything that they currently do to an active user. Now, they have someone named Bennett Cyphers, a staff technologist at the Digital Privacy Advocacy Organization, EFF, says that Facebook should consider automatically suspending data collection tied to deactivated accounts. Saying, quote, it should be a clear signal that the person does not want them to collect and monetize data about them. But of course, Facebook declined to provide any comments on the record for the story. Now, they also mentioned that Facebook gets smarter from fresh deactivated account data, saying that, for one, they say that Facebook, through cookies or Facebook pixels installed on specific sites and product pages, or via mobile SDKs, which is like software development kits, or through newer direct data conduits such as Facebook Conversion API, they're able to essentially have like buttons on websites without you ever having to click the word like. They track every little part of what you're doing on those pages, saying this represents a misconception that a lot of folks think the act of deactivating an account prevents some sort of ongoing data collection. It continues to aggregate. There you go. For Facebook, the value of adding fresh data to deactivated accounts is obvious. They are using your behavior to inform their social graph. If, for example, someone who deactivated their Facebook account showed interest in fitness content outside the platform or bought exercise equipment, Facebook could use that information to refine how people with similar interests and demographics are categorized for ad targeting, saying your actions put that user into a closer cohort to the audience you're already in. That's how machine learning works. It's collaborative filtering. So that's interesting. That's something I didn't really think about. Ben, who is a 31-year-old white male who likes video games, even if I delete Facebook, I go out and I interact with the product, I buy a product, I visit a product's website. Other 31-year-old white males who enjoy video gaming on Facebook will start to get similar products to the ones that I viewed or the ones that I interact with. It all feeds into the algorithm. It all tries to get people to buy things. And so, yeah, even if you deactivate, you're still going to affect other people. And of course, Facebook, the business model itself. So they mentioned that advertisers kept in the dark about deactivated accounts. Of course, you have the problem with potential reach. The way this becomes problematic for advertisers is that advertisers make their budgeting decisions based on that potential reach. Saying, I can see why Facebook would want to treat it as one big audience. I might start saying I'm only going to look at the portion of reach that Facebook can verify and then maybe lower their budgets. Facebook said that once an account is deactivated, it can't be served ad impressions, which makes sense. If the account is deactivated, the person is no longer sitting there looking at the ad. Yeah, it's deactivated, there's no eyeballs for it to look at. But they say that, so because of the estimated audience numbers it provides for campaign only include people it has shown ads to in the past 30 days, that estimate effectively removes some deactivated accounts. So Facebook doesn't want to completely remove deactivated accounts from their system because, again, they're still building them and they still count them as a potential target in terms of audience, but they do a little bit of filtering for advertisers so that, you don't just say, oh, we have 1 billion people, but 900 million of them are deactivated. They try to treat it at least a little fairly. Now, they say that the story this story came to be through the personal experience of the reporter here that wrote this. Years after deleting the Facebook app off the phone and never using it again, they found themselves downloading it for story research. That meant that they also had to log into the platform, which they didn't remember the username or password. They set up for a work-related dummy account that they rarely access. I used an email address and a password I thought would turn up that dummy account. Then suddenly, there it was, like some poltergeist, my old Facebook accounts. That is the real one I used on a personal basis for a decade or so before, but had finally killed off in 2019. Facebook had roused the thing like a monster disturbed from its 2.5-year slumber, and they're not exaggerating when they say that the frisson was palpable when the spirit of the profile showed up reinvigorated on the phone. So there you go. This reporter seemed a little creeped out that Facebook would keep someone's account active. So despite the fact that they attempt to log into different still active dummy account, Facebook's social graph gods had worked their magic. As far as Facebook was concerned, not only had I never deleted that old account, I had now signaled my intent to return to the newsfeed. But this had been no temporary respite when I used Facebook's download your data process to grab the information. They showed the precisely 2 years, 7 months, 13 days, 5 hours, and 26 minutes had passed between the time Facebook had registered the account deactivation and the moment it had went back to life. So there you go. A folder labeled Your Off Facebook Activity showed individual files revealing data reflecting my purchases and transactions with Facebook by various companies, including to The Athletic, Hulu, Netflix, as well as purchases on eBay, Wayfair, and a lot of other sites. So there you go. Let's go and wrap this up. by saying that, meanwhile, there are no technical limitations to how long a Facebook account can stay deactivated, so some people could deactivate their accounts and never return to the platform. However, Facebook has no policy limiting the length of time that they'll store that. That means photos, snippets, or comments and messages between friends, data about where people have lived or worked, or a list of code for cookies, IP addresses, email addresses, and device characteristics are all used by Facebook to detect identity, could be kept on Facebook servers in perpetuity. There you go. Ultimately, Facebook argued it would be a surprising and negative experience for people who return to Facebook only to find skeleton-like accounts. And Facebook sure has made that a priority. You will never return to a skeleton-like account. No, even if you deactivate and then reactivate years and years later, it will be as if nothing ever changed, nothing ever happened, and yeah, it will be almost a perfect account, as if that's kind of loud. It'll be a perfect account, almost as if you never left it. So, I think with that being said, everyone, that will be a quick little short little podcast, and my music is dying as we speak. So everyone, thank you for tuning in. You can check out more at computeramerica.com. That's the truth about Facebook and deactivating versus deletion. If you want to save yourself the hassle, delete your account. Deactivating is not enough. Deleting is the real way to do it. But of course, there's no going back. So everyone, stay safe out there. Bye, everyone.